My name is Hannah. I am 29 years old. I live in a small flat with my husband, Ben. I love him. He is kind to me. He helps me when I feel tired. He listens to me when I talk. He makes me feel safe. But there is one big problem. His family does not like me. When I met Ben, I was not looking for love. I was working in a cafe in town. He came in one evening. He ordered coffee and sat near the window. He looked sad. I gave him the coffee and asked, "Are you okay?" He looked up and smiled a little. "I had a long day," he said. After that day, he came often. Sometimes he brought a book. Sometimes he just sat and looked out the window. We started to talk. First, it was short talk. About the weather, about the coffee, then more. We spoke about our lives. I told him about my small family. I lived with my mother before she passed away. Now I live alone. He told me he had a big family. He had a mother, father, and one younger sister. One day he asked, "Do you want to go for a walk after work?" I said yes. We walked around the park. The air was cool. I felt happy. That was the start. After that, we met often. We had lunch together. We watched movies. I liked him more each day. He was not loud. He was not fake. He was simple and calm. After 1 year, Ben asked me to marry him. He did not plan a big moment. He just looked at me one night and said, "I want to be with you. Will you marry me?" I said yes. I was sure. I loved him. I asked, "Will I meet your family before the wedding?" He looked away and said, "Not now. They are not ready." I felt a small pain in my chest, but I smiled. "Okay," I said. "Maybe later." We had a small wedding. My 2 best friends came. His 2 friends came. No one from his family came. I wore a simple white dress. He wore a blue shirt. We signed papers at the city hall. Then we ate dinner at a small place near the river. It was quiet and warm. He held my hand and smiled. I felt lucky. We moved into a small flat after the wedding. It had 2 rooms and 1 small kitchen. I made tea every morning. He made toast. We talked about work and life. I felt like this was my new home. One day, Ben came home from work and said, "My parents want to meet you. We will go this weekend." My heart jumped. "Really?" I asked. "Yes." He said, "It's time." I felt nervous, but also happy. I cleaned my best dress. I bought flowers for his mother. I wanted to make a good first impression. I thought, they will see I love him. They will like me. We took a train to their town. It was far. The train ride took 3 hours. Ben looked out the window the whole time. He was quiet. When we reached the house, his mother opened the door. She looked at me but did not smile. "So, you are Hannah," she said. "Yes," I said with a smile. "It's nice to meet you." She turned and walked into the house. No welcome, no hug. Inside, his father was sitting on a chair. He looked at the TV. Ben said, "Dad, this is Hannah." His father did not move. He said nothing. Ben's sister Julia came down the stairs. She looked at me and laughed a little. "She looks simple," she said to Ben. I stood still. My face felt hot. My hands were cold. Ben said, "Julia, that's enough." She walked to the kitchen. She didn't even look back. We sat at the table. Ben's mother served soup. She gave me a small bowl. The others had full bowls. "I didn't know what you eat," she said. "So I made less for you." I said thank you. I smiled, but I felt small inside. No one spoke to me. I asked about their town. I asked about their jobs. They gave short answers. Some didn't even look at me. I looked at Ben. He looked down at his food. After lunch, I went to the kitchen to help clean. Ben's mother said, "You don't need to act nice. I know girls like you." I asked, "What do you mean?" She looked at me. "You married him for a better life, didn't you?" "No," I said. "I love him." She laughed. "Love? You don't know this family. You will never fit in." I stood there, frozen. My heart beat fast. I felt cold. Ben came in and saw my face. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. I didn't want to start a fight. Later that evening, we sat in the living room. Ben talked to his father about work. Julia played with her phone. I sat quietly. No one asked me anything. No one smiled at me. I felt like a stranger. That night I cried in the bathroom. I didn't want Ben to hear me, but he knocked on the door. "Hannah," he said, "are you okay?" I opened the door. My eyes were red. "They don't like me," I said. "They hate me." Ben looked sad. "They need time," he said. "They are not easy people." I asked, "Do they want you to leave me?" He said nothing. That silence was an answer. The next morning we left early. His mother said, "Next time, don't come." Julia smiled and waved, but not a kind smile. A cold one. On the train back, I sat by the window. I looked outside. My heart was heavy. I said, "I did my best." Ben said, "I know." I said, "They will never accept me." Ben looked at me. "Maybe not. But I love you." I wanted to believe that was enough. But deep down, I was not sure. I thought a family was about love. I thought they would see my heart, but they saw something else. I didn't understand why. And now, I don't know what to do. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. After we came home, I felt very sad. I did not want to talk. I sat on the bed and looked at the floor. Ben sat next to me. He tried to take my hand. I pulled my hand away. He said, "Please don't be like this." I said, "They don't want me. They don't see me as family. They don't even see me as a person." Ben did not speak. He looked down. I asked, "Did they speak to you before we went?" He said, "Yes." "They said they are not happy." I asked, "Then why did you take me there?" He said, "I wanted them to change. I wanted them to see you. I hoped they would like you." I said, "They did not." That night, I could not sleep. I looked at the ceiling. I heard cars outside. I felt cold. I wanted to cry again, but I had no more tears. The next morning, Ben went to work. I stayed at home. I looked at the dishes. I looked at the floor. I sat on the sofa for a long time. I did not move. I felt lost. I picked up my phone. I wanted to call my friend, but I didn't. I didn't know what to say. Later, I went to the small shop near our house. I bought eggs, bread, and tea. The woman at the counter smiled at me. "Nice day today," she said. "Yes," I said, but I did not feel happy. When I came home, I cooked dinner. I made rice and vegetables. I waited for Ben. He came home late. "Sorry," he said. "Work was busy." I said, "Dinner is ready." We ate in silence. He looked tired. I looked tired too. After dinner, I said, "I want to ask you something." He said, "Okay." I said, "If your family asks you to leave me, what will you do?" He looked at me. He did not answer. I asked again, "Ben, what will you do?" He said, "I don't want to choose." I said, "You may need to." He stood up and went to the window. He looked outside. "I love you," he said. "But they are my family." I asked, "So what am I?" "You are my wife," he said. "But they are part of my life too." I felt pain in my heart. I said, "I didn't ask you to leave them. I only want them to treat me well." He said, "I know, but they are difficult." I said, "I did nothing wrong." "I know," he said again. I went to the bedroom. I sat on the bed. I felt like I was not welcome in his life. I thought about leaving, but where could I go? I had no family now. My mother died 2 years ago. My father died when I was a child. I had no brothers or sisters. I had no home to return to. Ben came to the room and sat next to me. He said, "Please don't cry." I said, "I am not crying. I am thinking." He said, "Please don't think about leaving." I looked at him. "I don't want to leave," I said. "But I don't want to stay like this." He said, "I will talk to them again." I asked, "What will you say?" He said, "I will ask them to give you a chance." I said, "They had their chance." He looked down. He had no answer. A few days passed. Ben tried to act normal. He went to work. He came home. We ate dinner. But I was not the same. I didn't smile. I didn't talk much. He saw the change, but he didn't know what to do. One day his phone rang. I heard him say, "Hi, Mom." I stopped. I listened. He walked into the other room and closed the door. I could not hear the words, only the tone. It was not a happy voice. Later I asked, "What did she say?" He said, "She said I made a mistake." I said, "A mistake?" "Yes," he said. "She still thinks you are not right for me." I said, "And you?" He said, "You are my wife. I chose you." I asked, "Do you still feel that way?" He looked at me. "Yes." I wanted to believe him, but I didn't feel safe. A week later, Julia sent a message to Ben. She said she wanted to visit. I was surprised. He asked me, "Should I say yes?" I said, "It's your sister." He said, "I want her to meet you again." I said, "I don't think she wants that." He said, "Please, just one dinner." I said yes. I cleaned the flat. I made the place look nice. I wore a clean dress. I tried to smile. Julia came in. She looked around and said, "It's small." Ben said, "It's our home." She looked at me and said, "Still here?" I said, "Yes." "Still here?" She laughed. "You are stronger than I thought." I said, "I am not strong. I just love your brother." She sat down and said, "You don't belong in our family." Ben said, "Julia, stop." She said, "I'm telling the truth." Ben said, "This is my wife. If you can't respect her, don't come here again." Julia looked surprised. She stood up and took her bag. "Fine," she said. "I won't come back." She left. Ben sat down. He looked tired. I said, "That was hard." He said, "Yes, but I had to say it." I asked, "Will they all hate me now?" He said, "Maybe." I said, "And you?" He took my hand. "I don't hate you. I still love you." But in my heart, I felt scared. How long can love stay when a whole family is against me? I did not say the words out loud, but they were loud in my mind. I loved Ben. He loved me. But love felt small next to so much hate. That night, I stood by the window. I looked at the dark street. I asked myself, what should I do? I had no answer. The next morning, I felt tired. I did not sleep much. My head hurt. My heart felt heavy. I made tea. I sat at the table and looked at the wall. Ben was still sleeping. I did not wake him. I needed time to think. I looked around the flat. It was clean and small. We had simple things. A small sofa. A little table. 2 chairs. But it was our home. I liked this place. I did not want to leave, but I also did not want to feel sad every day. I asked myself, can I live like this? Ben came into the kitchen. He kissed my head. I did not smile. He asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "No." He sat down. "Do you want to talk?" I said, "I am tired, Ben. I feel alone." He looked at me. "You are not alone." I said, "I feel like I am. Your family hates me. They don't even try to know me." He said, "I told Julia not to come again." I said, "That helps, but it doesn't fix everything." He said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "I don't know." We sat in silence. The tea became cold. Later, I went to the park. I walked for a long time. I watched the people. Some walked with dogs. Some sat on benches. Some smiled. I did not smile. My eyes felt wet, but I did not cry. I sat near the tree. I closed my eyes. I thought about my mother. She always told me, "Be strong, but never stay where you are not wanted." I felt a tear fall down my cheek. Ben came to find me. He sat next to me. "I was worried," he said. "I needed air," I said. He took my hand. "Let's go home." That night, I cooked dinner. I made pasta and soup. We ate quietly. Ben said, "I spoke to my mother." I looked at him. "Why?" He said, "I wanted to try again." I asked, "What did she say?" "She said she will never accept you." I stopped eating. I felt pain in my chest. He said, "She told me I made a mistake. She said I should leave you." I asked, "And what did you say?" He looked down. "I told her no. I told her I will stay with you." I felt sad but also thankful. I said, "Thank you for saying that." He said, "It was not easy." She cried. She told me to choose. "And?" I asked. "I chose you," he said. "But I feel like I lost my family." I looked at him, and I never had one. He looked at me. "I'm sorry, Hannah. I really am," I said. "I know." We did not talk more that night. We watched TV. But I did not hear the words. My mind was not in the room. Days passed. I worked. I cleaned. I cooked. Ben worked too. But something felt broken between us. He was quiet. I was quiet too. One evening I asked him, "Are you happy?" He did not answer at first. Then he said, "I don't know." That hurt. I looked away. I asked, "Do you wish you married someone else?" "No," he said. "But I wish my family liked you." I said, "Me too." He said, "Maybe one day." But I did not believe that. I started to think about my life. I wanted to be happy. I wanted peace. I did not want to feel small every day. I loved Ben, but love was not enough. I needed more. I asked myself, can I stay like this forever? I looked at Ben while he slept. His face was calm. He looked like a boy. I touched his hair. I still loved him, but I also loved myself. I had to. One weekend, Ben said, "Let's go to the beach." We took the train. The sea was blue. The air was fresh. We walked on the sand. I held his hand. I wanted to feel close again. We sat near the water. He said, "I want to fix this." I asked, "How?" He said, "I don't know yet, but I want to try." I said, "I don't want to live in pain." He said, "I don't want that for you." I looked at him. "Then something has to change." He said, "Yes," but we both knew the truth. The change was not in our hands. His family would not change. And I could not forget how they made me feel. On the way home, I looked out the train window. The sky was gray. The sun was gone. I felt cold again. I thought about leaving, but I could not say the words yet. That night, I packed some clothes into a bag. Just a few things. I did not leave. I just wanted to be ready. I was not sure what to do. Ben saw the bag. He did not say anything. We sat on the sofa. The room was quiet. The clock ticked. I said, "Do you want me to go?" He said, "No, but I understand if you need to." I looked at him. My eyes were full of tears. He said, "I never wanted this. I just wanted to love you." I said, "You do, but it's not just about love." We held hands in silence. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew one thing. I was not accepted. And I didn't know how long I could live like that. My name is Olivia. I am 27 years old. I live in a small apartment in Seattle with my younger sister, Alina. She is 14 and still in school. We lost our parents when I was 19. It was sudden, and it changed everything. From that day, I promised myself I would keep Alina safe, no matter what happened to me. She is the only family I have. I work at a small pharmacy near the downtown market. The pay is not much, but it is enough for rent, food, and her school fees. At least, that is what I believed when I first started there. It began one rainy night, much like the one I had just run through. The streets outside were dark and wet. My boss, Mr. Kareem, asked me to stay late. He said we had a big delivery to check. I needed the extra hours, so I agreed without thinking. The back room smelled of damp cardboard and chemicals. Boxes were stacked against the wall. Many had no labels at all. Some had dates that had already passed months ago. Mr. Kareem told me to put them on the shelves anyway. His voice was calm, but there was no kindness in it. I knew it was wrong. Selling expired medicine was illegal. But I stayed quiet, kept my eyes down, and did as he said. A week later, an old woman named Mrs. Parker came in. She was coughing so hard that she had to hold her chest. She asked for cough syrup. I handed her a bottle from the shelf. She smiled, thanked me, and walked slowly out into the rain. 2 days later, her daughter came in, angry and shaking. She slammed the same bottle on the counter. She shouted that the syrup was fake and had made her mother worse. Her eyes were full of fear. I froze. Before I could speak, Mr. Kareem came from the back and took the bottle away. He told her it was a mistake and replaced it with another one. He gave her a fake smile until she left. Then he looked at me. He didn't say a word, but I understood. I was not to talk about what I saw. That night, I lay awake in bed. I could hear the rain hitting the windows. I kept thinking about Mrs. Parker's cough and her daughter's angry, worried face. My chest felt heavy. I knew I could not just forget. I decided to start keeping a record. I bought a small notebook and kept it in my bag. I wrote down the names of the products I thought were fake and the dates I found. When no one was watching, I took photos with my phone. I hid everything in a flour tin at home, behind a bag of sugar. From that moment, fear became my shadow. I checked over my shoulder when I walked home. I noticed every car that slowed down on our street. I told Alina never to open the door for strangers. She asked why, but I only told her to trust me. The less she knew, the safer she would be. One night we got another late delivery at the pharmacy. 2 men came in carrying large boxes. Their shoes left wet marks on the floor. They went straight to the back. I heard one of them say, "No paperwork tonight." My heart began to pound. I stood in the doorway and lifted my phone to take a photo. The click of the camera was soft, but one man turned around. His eyes met mine. I quickly lowered the phone and pretended to sweep the floor. My palms were wet with sweat. A few days later, strange things began to happen. A black car appeared outside our building. It stayed there for hours, engine off, windows dark. No one got out. One night, close to midnight, someone knocked on our door. The knock was slow, like they wanted me to listen. A man's voice said he was our neighbor and that there was a water leak downstairs. But our downstairs neighbor was an old woman with a soft voice, and this was not her. I didn't open the door. I stood still until the footsteps faded away. The next morning at work, Mr. Kareem asked about Alina. His voice was smooth, almost friendly, but I felt a cold weight in my stomach. She's fine, I said, trying not to show fear. He smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. That night, when I checked my phone before bed, I saw the message. Stay quiet. Think carefully. My fingers felt numb. I knew I needed help. I thought of my old friend Sarah. We had gone to school together, and she now worked as a nurse at a hospital in the city. She had always been honest, even when the truth was hard. I called her and asked if we could meet. The next day, I took my notebook, my phone, and all the photos to her. We met in the hospital cafe. The smell of coffee mixed with the sound of rain outside. I told her everything. I spoke quickly, afraid that if I stopped, I might lose the courage to finish. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she took my hand and said, "This is serious, Olivia. You can't keep this to yourself. It's dangerous for you and your sister." Sarah told me about a man at the hospital who worked as a patient advocate. He helped report unsafe medical practices. She said we should speak to him first before going to the police to understand our options. I agreed. We made a plan. I would make a second copy of all my notes and photos. Sarah would keep one set in her hospital locker, and I would keep the other hidden at home. If anything happened to me, she could still act. When I left the hospital, the black car was there again. This time it was parked near the bus stop. I didn't look at it. I walked to the corner, my bag heavy with the envelope. I thought of Alina's smile when she told me about her math test. I thought of Mrs. Parker coughing in front of me. My fear was real, but my reason for acting was stronger. That night, rain covered the city like a blanket. I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The street below was quiet, but my thoughts were loud. Alina was in her room doing homework. I told myself I would not run away from this. The secret I carried was dangerous, but the truth was more important. I didn't know what would happen next. I only knew that tomorrow I would take the next step. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I stood by the kitchen counter, drinking coffee and thinking about my plan. Alina sat at the table, eating cereal. She looked up at me and smiled. I forced myself to smile back, but my thoughts were already far away. I had the envelope in my bag. It held my photos and notes. Today, I would take it to Sarah so she could make the second copy. I checked it twice before we left the apartment. My hands were cold, even though the room was warm. We took the bus together. Alina talked about her science class. I listened, but I was also watching the people around us. A man in a gray coat sat across the aisle. He was reading a newspaper, but every now and then I felt his eyes on me. When we reached her school, I walked her to the gate. "Be safe," I told her. She laughed and said, "You too." The hospital cafe was busy when I arrived. I found Sarah near the window. Her hair was tied back, and she had a notebook open in front of her. I gave her the envelope under the table. She slipped it into her bag without looking inside. "We'll copy everything tonight," she said softly. "Then we talk to the advocate tomorrow." I nodded. My stomach was tight. I wanted this to be over, but I knew it would only get harder. On my way back to the pharmacy, I noticed the same gray coat from the bus. The man was walking on the other side of the street. I told myself it was a coincidence, but my legs moved faster. When I reached the store, Mr. Kareem was in the back. The air smelled like strong disinfectant, too strong for normal cleaning. He came out, wiping his hands. "Olivia," he said, "we may get an inspection next week. Make sure everything looks perfect." His eyes held mine for a second too long. The day passed slowly. Customers came and went. I kept checking the clock, waiting for my shift to end. Just before closing, a delivery truck arrived. This time, it was earlier than usual. I helped carry the boxes in. My hands touched one that felt lighter than it should. I set it down and quickly opened the side. Inside, instead of medicine, I saw rows of small bottles with no labels. My heart raced. I closed the box before anyone saw. That night at home, I called Sarah again. I told her about the delivery. She said we should add it to the report. She also told me that the patient advocate had agreed to meet us tomorrow afternoon. "He's careful," she said. "He knows these cases can be dangerous." I slept badly. Every sound in the hallway made me sit up in bed. Around 3 a.m, I heard footsteps outside our door. They stopped for a moment, then moved away. I didn't open the door. I stayed awake until the first light came through the window. The next day, I met Sarah in the hospital lobby. We went to a small office on the 3rd floor. The patient advocate's name was Michael. He was in his 40s, with kind eyes and a calm voice. I told him everything, from the expired boxes to the late-night deliveries. I showed him the photos on my phone. He looked at them carefully. "This is serious," he said, "but we have to be careful. If we report this the wrong way, they may hide the evidence." He explained that we needed proof from more than one person. If another worker spoke up, our case would be stronger. I told him that no one else at the pharmacy would dare to speak. He said then we would need more photos, more dates, and clear links between the fake products and the customers who bought them. Sarah put a hand on my arm. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. But I knew that if I didn't go back and collect more proof, nothing would change. I agreed to get more, but my chest felt heavy. That afternoon, I walked back to the pharmacy with my bag pressed close to me. The black car was parked 2 blocks away. I turned down another street to avoid walking past it. Inside the store, everything looked normal. Mr. Kareem was in his office, talking on the phone. I started restocking shelves, but my eyes kept going to the back room. At one point, Mr. Kareem left to get coffee. I slipped into the back and took 3 quick photos of the unlabeled bottles. I wrote the date on a sticky note and stuck it in my notebook. My hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped my phone. When I left work, The air outside felt sharp and cold. I walked fast, but near the bus stop, someone brushed past me from behind. My bag slipped off my shoulder. I bent to pick it up, but when I stood again, the person was gone. My phone was still inside, but the envelope I had kept in the side pocket was missing. My heart dropped. I called Sarah as soon as I got home. "They took it," I said, my voice shaking. "The envelope is gone." She told me not to panic. She still had the copy we made last night. Relief washed over me, but it lasted only a second. If they knew I had the envelope, they knew I was collecting proof. That night, I moved the flour tin to the top shelf in the kitchen. I locked the windows. I even pushed a chair against the door. Alina noticed. "Liv, are you okay?" she asked. I told her I was just tired from work. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. The city outside was quiet, but inside me, everything felt loud. I thought about Michael's words. I needed more proof. But the more I searched, the closer danger came. Still, I knew I would keep going. I couldn't stop now. The rain began again, soft at first, then harder. I closed my eyes and listened. Tomorrow, I would go back. Tomorrow, I would try again. Morning came gray and wet again. The air smelled of rain and salt from the harbor. I sat by the window for a moment, watching the street. Cars moved slowly over the wet road. My chest was tight, but I also felt a strange kind of strength. Today, I would not hide. Today, I would take the next step. I made tea for Alina. She rubbed her eyes and smiled faintly. "You look worried," she said. I told her I was just tired. She packed her school bag. Before we left, I reminded her, "Go straight home after school." She didn't ask why, but her eyes showed she knew something was wrong. We walked together to the bus stop. I left her at the school gate and turned toward downtown. The streets were still damp and the clouds hung low. I kept scanning the sidewalks, looking for anyone familiar. At the pharmacy, the lights were already on. Mr. Kareem was in his office talking on the phone. His eyes followed me for a moment before he turned away. I put my bag under the counter and started checking shelves. A woman came in with a young boy. The boy was coughing badly. She asked for cough syrup. I made sure to choose a safe, real brand, even paying part of the cost myself. I couldn't let her take one of the bad bottles. When the store was quiet, I slipped into the back room. I opened one of the new boxes. Inside were small bottles with no labels. My heart pounded. I took quick photos and wrote the date on a piece of paper. As I slid it into my pocket, I heard footsteps. Mr. Kareem stood in the doorway. "Busy morning?" he asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I told him I was just checking stock. He told me to leave the boxes alone and walked away. My hands were still shaking when I returned to the counter. At lunch, I texted Sarah. "I have more proof." She replied, Meet after work. Her short message made my heart race faster. Later that day, a man in a gray coat came in to buy gum. I had seen him before, on the bus, outside the store. He paid and left without a word, but I felt his eyes on me the whole time. Near closing time, a delivery truck arrived. The boxes had a fake company name on the label. I signed the sheet, folded it quickly, and hid it in my apron. This could link the deliveries to the store. When I left work, the streets were almost empty. I heard a car engine behind me. It slowed to match my pace. The window rolled down a little. A man's voice said my name softly. "You should stop," he said. "Think of your sister." The car drove off before I could move. Fear made my knees weak, but I kept walking. I went straight to the hospital to meet Sarah. We sat in a small office with Michael, the patient advocate. I showed them the photos and the delivery sheet. Michael's face was serious. "This is enough to start a case," he said, "but it will put you at risk." My stomach twisted. Still, I said, "File it." Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. Michael warned us not to go home alone tonight. Sarah invited me and Alina to stay with her. I called Alina and told her to meet us there. When she arrived, she looked worried. "Is this about your work?" she asked. I told her I would explain later. For now, we were safe. That night, Michael sent me a short message. "Report filed. Inspectors tomorrow." I barely slept. Early the next morning, Michael called again. The inspectors wanted me there when they went to the pharmacy. Sarah stayed with Alina at the hospital while I went with Michael and the inspectors. We arrived before the store opened. Mr. Kareem came in a few minutes later. His face turned pale when he saw the badges. The inspectors went straight to the back room. They opened boxes, checked dates, and took photos. They found the unlabeled bottles and sealed them in bags. One inspector told Mr. Kareem to wait by the door. A police officer soon arrived. He spoke quietly with the inspectors, then turned to Mr. Kareem. "You are under arrest," he said. Mr. Kareem looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were full of hate, but I didn't look away. When they led him out in handcuffs, I felt my fear begin to fade. The inspectors thanked me and said the store would be closed. They promised to follow up with the customers who might have been hurt. Outside, the rain had stopped. I called Sarah to tell her it was over. Alina's voice came through the phone next, bright and light. "Can we go home now?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Home. A week later, we moved to a new apartment on a quiet street. The windows looked out over a small park. The black car never came again. I slept through the night for the first time in months. I never went back to the pharmacy. Instead, I began helping Michael's team. I spoke with people who had been hurt by bad medicine. I told them to check dates, to ask questions, to protect themselves. I had lived in fear every day. But I had also learned that love can make you brave. And for Alina, I would do it all again.